Staying close to your tween daughter. The bad news is that your tween's developing body is flooded by hormones, her brain is rewiring, her need to discover herself and her place in the world takes precedence over the other things she values, like her family and schoolwork, and she probably can't acknowledge how much she still loves and needs you, because she's working hard to feel a grown-up and independent. The good news is that if you can accept this new situation and adjust your parenting accordingly, the tween years are the perfect time to strengthen your relationship before she heads into teen years. So for those hard days, here are my top tips to make parenting your tween girl less drama and more delight. Be willing to change. You can't parent the way you did when she was little. It just isn't appropriate or effective. If she gets testy, that's a signal that you need to adjust your parenting style to connect and listen more. This will happen just at those moments when you want her to listen to you, of course. Focus on strengthening the relationship. You'll get no respect if she doesn't feel connected to you. Fight like the dickens to stay close to your daughter. Do not let her push you away. She still needs you, she just can't acknowledge it. Find every opportunity to connect. Hug her hello every morning and hug her goodbye when she leaves for school. Do this with a sense of humor and she will humor you. Greet her with delight and a hug when you see her again later in the day. She may not need tucking in at night, but that shouldn't stop you from lying down next to her to discuss her day and having a few minutes of quiet connection. Many parents find that time just before bed to be the time their daughter is least distracted by other things, and most willing to open her heart. Give measured independence as she shows she can handle it. If you insist on controlling all her choices, you're inviting rebellion, or worse. If you can find appropriate ways to give your daughter independence, she won't have to rebel against you to start standing on her own 2 feet. Of course she'll make mistakes. That's how humans learn. And of course she isn't ready to make all her decisions. You're still the parent. Deciding how much to weigh in is the hardest part of this parenting. Schedule quality time. Create regular times, at least once a week, when you get together for brunch, a walk, a manicure, or to kick a soccer ball around. Make the most of those opportunities too, but you don't have to always have deep conversations. Just appreciate and enjoy her. And listen, listen, listen. Remember, the more you give her advice, the more she feels like you don't have confidence in her ability to figure things out for herself. Instead, ask good questions and empathize with the tough dilemmas she faces with friends, academics, and other choices. Cultivate empathy and try to see things from her perspective. As you listen to her, remind yourself that the upset of the moment may not seem like a big deal to you, but to her it feels like the end of the world. That means that when she over-dramatizes, you offer empathy. Her stubbed toe may not have warranted all that fuss, but something does hurt and she does want you to make it better, even if she isn't exactly sure what's bothering her and how to put it into words. Be sure your daughter is getting 9 hours of sleep each night, as an absolute minimum. A big contributor to the infamous moodiness of tweens and teens is that they don't get enough sleep. Research shows they need a minimum of 9 hours. If your child isn't waking up naturally, without an alarm or a wake-up call from you, then they aren't going to bed early enough to get enough rest. Most preteens begin to find it harder to fall asleep at night. But when kids stay up late, their stress hormones like cortisol kick in, which makes it harder to fall asleep. The problem is that cortisol stays in the system and makes them edgy the next day. It also contributes to depression, anxiety, immune suppression, and weight gain. The famous moodiness of teenagers is partly attributable to late bedtimes, which have become standard practice in our culture. Just because your toddler gains the ability to keep himself awake doesn't mean you'd let him stay up half the night. What about that research that the body clock of teens is set to stay up late? The researchers didn't control for screen usage. When humans use blue light, phones, iPads, computers, TV, within an hour or 2 of bedtime, it suppresses melatonin and keeps us awake. Naturally, then, we sleep later the next morning, because young people do need more sleep than adults. I'm betting that as soon as they stop kids from using screens. Limit screens, as tween girls begin to lose interest in pretend play and the other games that occupied their earlier years, many of them begin to spend more time on the computer, and it isn't unusual for them to fall into the grip of a computer addiction. As a first step, you'll want to sign an agreement for responsible cell phone usage when you first give your child a phone. Be sure you're sitting down with your child daily to review the texts and other phone usage and talk about the choices your child is making. Then, be sure to limit screen usage for anything besides homework to the hours after homework is completed. The lure of social media sites can be strong, especially if other kids are on them. Facebook and Instagram have a rule that users must be 13, so getting social media accounts when you're under 13 requires lying, which is enough reason for parents to nix it. This is one of the few times the culture will support you in your parenting, so take advantage of it. It's a good idea to familiarize yourself with the tech culture of your child and her friends. You can start here for some suggested parent-friendly websites on raising web-savvy kids, internet smarts, keeping your kids safe online. You should also know that computer game manufacturers spare no expense and use very sophisticated testing to ensure that their games are physically addictive, which means that your child's body is bathed in adrenaline and other neurotransmitters as soon as she even thinks about playing her games. Computer games actually change our brain chemistry while we're playing them, and we don't know how long the effects last afterwards. We don't expose our children to other addictions and leave them to fend for themselves. Kids need our help to manage this addiction, too. Nurture your daughter's passions. Anything she really cares about and can throw herself into is protective, a place to feel competent, a place to push herself and learn to manage frustration, a way to build resilience, a place to lose herself when the arrows of outrageous fortune pierce too deeply. Does she like to play volleyball, write, draw? Do whatever it takes to encourage her. It's critical that this be something she is drawn to, of course, not something her parents are pushing. And don't make her perform or submit to competitions. Let this be about engagement with her own passion, not performance. Don't let your daughter turn into a couch potato. Regular exercise has tremendous benefits, from getting the metabolism moving to balancing raging hormones to helping her fall asleep easily at night. Make a habit of physical activity every day, whether a bike ride, soccer game, family hike, or time on the treadmill. But be warned, you'll probably have to join in. Instead of resenting that, see it as a way to stay connected and get some exercise yourself. That's all for today. See you next time. Stay tuned.